approach, Sky 6316, 8.8 for 6,000.
Got 6316, North Yelp Road, still maintain 3,000, I'm 1 for the right.
3,000, Sky 6316.
Redwood 811, still maintain 4,000, airport's open o'clock, 1, 2, 3, 4,000, Redwood 811, airport site, Redwood 11, 36 over,
Over Terrafly runway heading runway 5. Let's take off.
Check! Hey!
And we're ready for takeoff. Sit back, relax. It's time to travel with Cosmic Passport. Spaced Out Weekend presents Elizabeth Anglin's Cosmic Passport, a 1-hour warm-up of news, stories, thoughts, and ideas to captivate your mind. You can follow us at spacedoutradio.com.
20 years have passed us by, and we look back and count the time, burning like the summer sun when the world was young. As I lay staring from the ground, and 7 trumpets wait to sound.
And now, here's Our Lady of Flight, Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio Weekend. This is your host before the main host of the night, Elizabeth Anglin, coming to you from beautiful downtown Madrid, New Mexico, or as some people say, Madrid. But we're Madrid, New Mexico. We are the home of the free, the land of the brave, and it has been requested that I take a picture of myself standing on my front porch with a baseball bat, because somehow it's gotten around that, even as a liberal Dem, I believe in kicking some butt and taking some names later, especially spooky sort of paranormal butt. But, also people who just are relatively annoying. Anyway, we'll get back to that later, where the baseball bat came up. There's a whole history to that. But I want to welcome you to Spaced Out Radio Weekend with no baseball bat. My arms are open. Please come on in. We have a great show for you tonight. James Tyson will be interviewing Dr. Roy Hill regarding the psychology of near-death experiences. And Dr. Roy Hill is a PsyD, a doctor of psychology, and he's been working as a psychologist in the field for a couple of decades. But don't run away screaming just because he's, oh my God, it's a psychologist. This is a good thing. He talks about the spirituality and the experiential nature of near-death experiences, as in, he doesn't say, hey folks, it's all in your head. He actually talks about how it helps psychologically with people, and I think that's great. I am a near-death experiencer. I have been living in this world for over a quarter century as a near-death experiencer, and man, I think it sorted me out a bit. I was still kind of neurotic afterwards for a while, but I was young. You got to be neurotic when you're young, because everything you don't know what's going to happen. It's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, drama queen, But still helps to have had the experience, and it's informed a lot of my life. So I can't wait to listen to Dr. Roy Hill tonight. I hope you are as excited as I am that he will be on with James. But before we get to that interview, we have news, more paranormal news of the week, and I have some announcements for you. Hey, if you've been coming back to spacedoutradio.com after a little hiatus, maybe you went on vacation, had family, were traveling for work, guess what? We have a new website, and our website is really cool. You can just get on there right now if you're not listening to me through Spreaker. Go to spacedoutradio.com, click enter, and you will be listening to the show live. The website also streams the last episode of the week when you click enter. So it's easy to use. It's got an uber cool alien face on the front with James in one eye and Dave Scott in the other. Go check it out, spacedoutradio.com. And if you really love Spaced Out Radio and Spaced Out Radio Weekend as much as I do, and you want us to keep bringing you the best in paranormal, ufological, cryptozoological, spiritual, and intuitive stories, guests, experiences, please sign up for the SOR Space Travelers membership. The membership is only $5 a month. It's less than, coffee and a donut, a dinky cup of coffee and a dinky donut. And with that membership, you get access to a private section on the spacedoutradio.com website. You will be entered into monthly prize draws. We have tons of books waiting for you. James knows what they are because I think they're in his hot little hands and he can tell you later. And there are also private posting areas for your paranormal videos, photos, and stories about your experiences. It's a place where you can network with other experiencers and other paranormal investigators. We also will have a private monthly interview and a monthly newsletter. So check it out, Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers membership. It's super cool, and I hope you'll consider doing it, and we'll do it so that we can interact with you more than just on the show and more than just in the chat room. Speaking of interactivity, we've got some interactive, somewhat personal, somewhat this involves my name dropping of names you've never heard of. So I'm going to get to the news of the week. And today, Philip K. Dick came up in the news of the week for no particular reason. It's just that he was in the news, and someone wrote a story about him. And I never met Philip K. Dick. He died when I was a sophomore in high school. But I met both Tessa Dick, who was his non-official wife, his last wife, and one of his female friends from when he lived in California when I was working at MIT. It was a very, very good friend of his who used to have dinner with him. And I didn't meet them together. I met them chronologically. When I was working at MIT, I worked across from Sonia, who was a very good friend of his, and then I met Tessa later on. So it's kind of this, is there any coincidence? Are people who are kind of crazy-minded or kind of open to the expansive worldview, the expanded consciousness, do we all find ourselves drawn together at some place in time, in the time stream across the universe? And Philip K. Dick comes up because there has been some writing about coincidences in psychology today, that there are, certain people don't believe in coincidence at all. Other people believe that everything is preordained or pre-written. That's not what I believe, but I do believe that based on our resonant frequencies, like what we're resonating with, what we're interested in, what we're really curious about, what trips our trigger and floats our boat, so to speak, about being here in the world and experiencing both physical reality and spiritual reality and intuitive reality and other creatures and this whole macrocosmic wonderment that we find ourselves within, we are going to resonate more along the lines of certain people than with certain other people. So anyway, I might be crazy, but I have resonated in this lifetime with people who have been close to Philip K. Dick. And what's interesting is that, he took a lot of speed. So if you think I'm talking fast, it may be the Boston. It could be the tea. It's not coffee. Or it could just be, sometimes I'm a little manic. But Philip K. Dick took a lot of speed, and he wrote a lot of books on speed. And he wrote books and wrote stories that I have enjoyed since I was a kid. I read one of his stories, and I don't even know what the name of it was, but it had a butterfly on it. And it was amazing. And then I read some other stories when I was a kid. I don't remember the names because this was all like 13, 14, 15 years old. They might have just been coming out and just gotten to our little town library in Michigan at the time. And I remember thinking as a kid, this is the most brilliant writer I have ever read. He was writing about future worlds and things that would happen in terms of mutations in animals and sort of dystopian societies and cracks in time and cracks in the universe and cracks in space. But, you know, at the same time he was doing all of this, he was an experiencer. And one of his experiences had to do with an experience of the divine. And tonight when Roy Hill comes on, we're going to be talking about, you know, the near-death experience and the experience of the divine. But one that he talked to people about was in February of 1974. And this is written about in Publishers Weekly. And the author is Kyle Arnold, and he wrote about this on Friday. And it's a good article. Check it out, Publishers Weekly, The Divine Madness of Philip K. Dick by Kyle Arnold is the book. But Philip K. Dick talks about an experience of February of 1974. He was at home recovering from dental surgery when he suddenly was touched by the divine. The doorbell rang, and he opened the door, and he was stunned to see a girl with black hair, very large eyes, who was very lovely and intense, who had a gold necklace of a Christian fish symbol, and she was there to deliver his medicines to him for his dental surgery. And after the door shut, as soon as it shut, he was blinded by a flash of pink light, and a series of visions ensued. First came images of abstract paintings, followed by philosophical ideas, and then sophisticated engineering blueprints. He believed that the pink light was a spiritual force which had unlocked his consciousness, granting him access to esoteric knowledge. In the following months of his life, the visions continued. Scenes of ancient Rome appeared, superimposed over Dick's suburban neighborhood. A local playground seemed to be a Roman prison. There was a chain link fence, and instead of the fence, he began to see it as iron bars. And where there were children playing, he began to see weeping Christian martyrs about to be fed to lions. He saw pedestrians dressed in Roman military uniforms, stone walls, and iron bars everywhere. He didn't think he had gone back in time, he wrote to a friend, but he had the sense that Rome had come forward by insidious and sly degrees under new names hidden by the flack talk and phony obscurations, at last into our world again. Dick's supposed time had stopped in 70 AD, the year the Temple of Jerusalem was destroyed by the Roman siege. Everything that happened afterwards was an illusion, and the world was still under Rome's dominion. Dick believed the Roman Empire was embodied in the tyrannical Nixon administration and responsible for the assassinations of the Kennedys and Martin Luther King Jr., and his own role was that of an undercover Christian revolutionary fighting to overthrow the empire. And this is why the delivery girl had flashed him the fish sign. So, he was crazy in that he saw meaning in a necklace of a fish. But I think that in this madness of his visions, there's some amount of truth, because if you read his books, and if you do a lot of psychic work, if you're working with people, you're working with the Akashic Records, you're working with guides like I do. I mean, the movie, The Adjustment Bureau, is really quite wonderful, not because guides are the control freaks in the movie, but because there are times where people are redirected on their path, where they'll, if they get off path, they'll be redirected, and sometimes it may be an accident. And you go, ooh, well, I remember from that movie, that was really sinister. Well, I have to tell you, from working with guides, that is not as sinister as it seems. It's just you really have to get really, really far off your path for that to happen. So, he could see that. That was something he could see. There was something that his consciousness could understand, and through the lens of his either paranormal or madness, he was able to write it down and come up with a story about it that explained how it was happening. So this is a book I think I'm going to read, and I think I'm going to go back. The book again is The Divine Madness of Philip K. Dick by Kyle Arnold. I'm going to read it because people who knew him and were close to him have come into my life, not just people who were fans, people who actually knew him. And I suppose that somewhere we're all resonating on some similar frequency, his friends and myself, and that's why we've been in the same places at the same time in order to meet. So again, the book is The Divine Madness of Philip K. Dick, and go back if you look up. He's got a ton of books on Amazon.com and probably Barnes and Noble too, and probably some other places if you have a free reader of some kind. If you haven't checked out his work, check it out. He spent a lot of time on speed to do it. He wrote a lot of books in a short amount of time, and they are complicated and complex. There's a lot of systems work, there's spiritual work, there's some understanding of science and physicality that was really before his time. Not very many people understood biology and systems of biology and ecosystems the way he did. It's really quite brilliant. So check it out. He's in the news this week because a new book is out. Last week, when I was cut off, I was really talking about near-death experiences because there was an article in the Washington Post about near-death experiences. There were two articles last week. One was in the Boston Globe, and it was about, what people believing in UFOs again. I took issue with it because they have a quote from Dr. Mack, which is Dr. John Mack, who I did research with, which was circa 1994, and he was saying that he wouldn't attest to the physicality of UFOs or to alien abduction experiences, but he knew that something was going on and it was worth studying. Well, he later came out, and on a video, which you will find on the Johnny Mack Institute website, he came out, there's a video and a transcript where he says, oh no, I do believe that there's physicality to UFO abductions, which I think is darn good, given that we were looking at an implant and we were looking at physical burns and we were looking at physical manifestations of abduction experiences and ET contact at the time we were working together. But he didn't want to say it until after he had finished with his research. By the time the video comes out and the statement comes out where he says, oh no, I think there's something physical here, he didn't want to sway the research that we were doing. And so he was really leaving it up to the abductees and experiencers who were working with him to say, oh no, this is physical. Oh no, this is physical. Oh no, this is physical, because he didn't want to be seen to be swaying it. And one of the ways that skeptics and debunkers would go about skepticizing and debunking would be to say, oh, well, you just programmed them all to think that way. And so sometimes he took a very hard line on not agreeing with what we said, because he didn't want to be seen to be swaying us. And it was frustrating, because it was like, listen, dude, what are we working on here? In 2 weeks from now, are you going to, say I belong in a rubber room? Of course he wasn't. He's a nice guy. But sometimes when he took his hard line, it felt like, oh, geez, I don't know what I'm into here. And that wasn't just with me. That was with other people. But UFOs are in the news again. People believing in UFOs is in the news again. Because there was a low water mark there was a high water mark in the 1990s. When I started doing research in 1990, the high water mark came up, and then the X-Files came on, and MIT had the academic conference, and then as we got into the millennium, the 21st century, the interest in UFOs began to wane. I can tell you why. I was getting online at the time and looking at some of the chat rooms and looking at what was happening, and they were just mean people. People were mean to abductees. They were saying mean things about experiencers. They were saying that we had already been proven to be nuts, that we had already been proven to be deluded, etc., etc., etc. And then there was that kind of trolling that, now we've been on the internet long enough. We know what a troll is. People know how to handle a group. Initially, when the groups got started on the internet, there were trolls everywhere and people really didn't know how to handle them. And if you were an alien abductee or a contactee or experiencer, you couldn't find a safe place to go and talk about what happened with you, because almost every place had trolls and they were mean. So I think that a lot of the reason why in 2001 to 2005, the previous 1990s interest of Americans who believed in extraterrestrial beings having visited the Earth at some time in the past was 27%. The number rose to 33% in 2001, and then it would drop back to 24% in 2005. I remember from that time period getting online and just seeing the meanness that was there and being really incensed by it. But now we're in 2016. The X-Files is back. Hillary Clinton is pledged to disclose what the government knows about aliens if elected. We will see. And the Boston Globe article, which I talked a little bit about last week, came up and was published last week, which suggests that belief in UFOs may be growing. There was a 2015 Ipsos poll, which reported that 45% of Americans believe that extraterrestrials have visited the Earth. So that's about half of us, not quite half of us. This article is written in The Conversation, the academic rigor journalistic flair magazine. You can find it at theconversation.com if you want to take a look at it, or you can click through to it through theanomalist.com and see what the links are. But I think it's positive. I mean, I know that a lot of it is we are having a pushback against, for complicated reasons, there's a pushback against the quote-unquote scientific elite. Some people believe in global warming, some people don't. Some people think that scientists are now, mouthpieces of liberal Democrats. I happen to be a liberal Democrat. I don't think they are. But, and then there's also more of a pushback against the government. People are looking at the government very critically and saying, hey, you have to have known that people were being abducted by aliens. You have to have known that other things are going on, and you have to be empowering the people who are using us in one way or another for their own gain. And I think that's what it comes down to is a fair amount of distrust of traditional systems that we put our trust in the 20th century. Oh, if you go to school and you get educated and you get a science degree, you'll help society. And those were the things that were pumped down the TV in the 1950s and 60s. Science was going to save us. If you got a government job, you were going to be serving the people. And as time has gone on, we found out that our politicians are crooked. They're in league with corporations that do cover up problems that they have, like, faulty ignition systems in cars, etc. We have kids that are getting weird illnesses, etc., etc., etc. So science seems neither to be serving anything but the bottom line, and neither sometimes do politicians. And in that sort of rift between these overstructures and the common man, we find more belief in the paranormal and more belief in UFOs. I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem with it, because in some way it's just the coming forward of truth. It's like, do we want to believe the propaganda that we've been fed for decades about how wonderful our system is and how everybody is serving everybody and people are not serving, lining their own pockets, and politicians are not dirty, or they're not, pedophiles, or they're not this, and everybody's lily white and wonderful. And the fact of the matter is, no, we're not believing that propaganda anymore because it's been proven to be wrong. And so we're questioning, what else is able to be proven to be wrong and what else is able to be proven to be right. Anyway, that's my opinion about why more and more people are believing in UFOs. So we've come up quite a bit, 45% of Americans believing that extraterrestrials have visited the Earth. We thought we were weird black sheep, but we're almost 50% of the population at this time in North America. I'm going to extend Americans to North America. I don't know. Canadians might be much more sober, but there's all that whiskey up there. James will have to help me out with this after the break to figure out, are Canadians as much believers in UFOs as Americans? Are they more sober? Or are they drinking more whiskey? James, do you think you can help me with that after the break?
I can help you with whiskey.
Okay, we need some whiskey.
Whiskey's good after the break. Already?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll throw a break on. I thought it was going to be in 4 more minutes, but we'll talk amongst yourselves. Yeah. We'll be right back with more from Elizabeth, Anglin, and eventually me right after this.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Fairies? Bigfoot? Dogmen? Trolls? Goblins? Hey, if it's cryptid in any way, I'm looking into it. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, also known as Spaced Out Radio's Crypto Guru. Join me every second Wednesday of the month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will talk about the stories people call tall tales. I will fill you in on the latest sightings and the hidden histories that are causing quite a stir. You can find everything at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr, or my Facebook page, Rivulet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings, no matter where you are. It's time for you to make time for you.
Are you an ET experiencer, but you just don't know what's going on? Are you too timid or shy to discuss it with anyone? Maybe I can help. Join me, R. Keith Andrews, the first Friday of every month on Spaced Out Radio, and I will help you to find the answers you're looking for. Together, I will help you understand the off-worlders and the true meanings behind your experiences. All you have to do is join us in the Spaced Out Radio chat room. See you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on 2 mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. 2 mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio?
Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us.
From the radio, commercials, to banners, to social media.
Have a product you'd like our host to endorse? We can do that too.
Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Spaced Out Weekend and Cosmic Passport can be heard every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. We're always 3 hours a night, 7 days a week. And you can listen to Spaced Out Radio Monday through Friday as well. If you'd like to advertise with us, go to our website, spacedoutradio.com, click on the Advertise with Us banner, and find the package that best suits your advertising needs.
And this is Elizabeth Anglin back on Spaced Out Weekend. Your, your place to hear me chat with James before he interviews somebody really cool like Roy Hill tonight on near-death experiences. If you love our show and you want to support us and you want us keeping what we're doing, please consider becoming a Spaced Out Radio Space Traveler and get the membership for $5 a month, and you'll get lots of other cool stuff like the books James was telling me about. What books are you sitting on over there to give out to people?
Well, stand by. I have a pile of each. So when I name one of them, just imagine 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 mounting up. I've got Conscious Men. That's from written by John Gray, who wrote, as we were talking in the chat room, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. He wrote that with Arjuna Argd. And we've got a few of those. We have Patty Conklin's God Within. We have Above and Beyond, Lisette Larkins. Priorities for a Planet in Transition, Gerard Artisan. And the other Gerard Artisan book, Here to Help, UFOs and the Space Brothers. Now, Gerard Artisan will be coming on in August, but he's over in the Netherlands and sent the books over for me to peruse. And I don't really peruse them because then I find I don't really have much to talk about with those guys because I'm not one of those kind of interviewers. I'd rather him tell me what his book's about as opposed to me pretending I know what's in there. And we also have the Mojave Incident. I've got a few copies of that. Ron Felber, that's the couple who were out in the Mojave Desert where they had an interaction with alien beings. And Dave Scott has a flagon of these books too from the people he's been interviewing. So we've got quite the Spaced Out Radio library going.
Well, I'm going to have to send you some of mine from experience. And the question is, what do we think of John Gray? You kind of said something during the break. Do we think nice things? Is he going to be on our show? No.
We didn't. We're not going to interview John Gray. We interviewed Arjuna a few months back.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then it's kind of Arjuna to give us books. Because, sometimes I feel like I'm from Mars, especially when I have my baseball bat. And it's just like, you're not listening to me, whack.
No, you're more kind of a Halley's Comet kind of person. You're not really a planets person at all. You're transient.
I'm not really. I'm transient with a baseball bat. Well, yeah. I suppose that's a good, if you're transient, that's a good thing to have. Anyway, so you guys totally in the SOR Space Travelers chat room, you cracked me up. I'm always going to have this picture because, yes, I was reading from the article in the conversation and I was reading the other article about Philip K. Dick. But now I'm going to have juxtaposed with Philip K. Dick this picture of Divine that Joe posted because Galen asked, "What's Divine? I don't know anything about that." then Joe posted a picture of Divine, and that's a mind movie now I won't be able to get out of my head. So thank you guys. I just really, really appreciate you. Namaste for putting that picture in my head. The divine in me sees the divine in you. And with that being said, let's talk about Roy Hill and experiences of the divine in the near-death state, or the dead state, as I think Joe and my dad and myself would say. You know, we've been dead, all of us, like flatlined.
Really?
Dead. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure I was dead in another life, because it'd be damn crowded in here. But I have yet to consciously know that have I had a near-death experience. I have been nearly killed, but was completely alive at the time. Like somebody was going to shoot me, but I
wasn't that them. Like twice a week?
No.
For you?
No, that's like I didn't work in your country.
Oh, right. Okay, good.
This is Canada.
Yeah, yeah, you were
what, are you
safer.
Kidding?
That's good. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's that those things happen maybe once every 20 years where you possibly might get into a position where you could get killed. You know, but it's not we still, maybe every 10 to 15 years, we'll have somebody go nuts and kill 2 or 3 of us. And we all discuss that. That's the price we pay not to militarize police and have a lot of them running around with machine guns and things like that. It's, you know, we still are pretty relaxed, and which is a good thing.
Yeah.
So I'm stirring my tea. There is an echo on my mic, so when I stir the tea, I hear like the little clink of the spoon twice. So I'm reaching for something that sounds like metal in the bottom of my cup, but then I realize it's just the double clink of the spoon. Paranormal. This is how paranormal works.
So, you have a pair of abnormal ears, or something.
I've been abnormal for years and years. It's and just for those in the chat room, it's James, and I'm going to just say it's James because no one can tell us apart unless I change my little icon, which is what I should do. Just fire it over to my fancy spaced out weekend icon, which is different from David's. So you've had a near-death experience.
Yeah. Yes, I did.
Why?
The alien screwed up, and I think it was an implant in my head, and it was a situation. It was in October of 1990. I had just come back from a weekend trip to Cornell University to see my high school boyfriend, who actually, we went to Cornell, but we were actually at Skaneateles Lake. So we were in Ithaca and at Skaneateles and kind of touring around for the weekend. I just got back. I went to bed and I hadn't fallen asleep yet. And all of a sudden there was this gigantic pop and a little bit of pain in my head, like, you know, something had popped in my head, and I felt a moment of pain when it went pop. And the next thing I know, I wasn't in my body, I was over my body, and I was infused with this cobalt, Roy Hill writes that cobalt blue lake. Well, I was infused with blue light. Between a deep dark aquamarine and a cobalt light. And I was scared because I wasn't in my body anymore, and the pop had been somewhat violent. You know, it didn't hurt, but it was strong. And I'm like, oh my God, what just happened? And then I heard a voice, and it was in a lighter blue light beside me to the right-hand side. And it said, "You're okay. Don't worry, you're okay." And I still proceeded to freak out. And then the next time it said, "No, really, you're okay." I felt not just as if I was safe, but I felt that I was okay in every imaginable aspect of my existence, that I was loved, that all of the ways that I had judged myself as lacking, as being less than, as possibly failing, or being a failure, or not being good enough, or not pretty enough, or just not okay, did not exist. They were all part of a very thin layer of illusion that and it was really neurosis on my part at 24. It was this layer of neurotic illusion that I was not okay, and I was striving to overcome in my life all these ways that I was not okay. I had not finished my college degree yet. I changed my major, so I wasn't finished yet. I was working while I was in school. I had dumped my fiance. I had aliens coming and picking me up at night. I was working full time. I mean, there was just all of these things about my life that were not okay, and it all dropped away. Everything was perfectly okay. I was okay. My life was okay. The trip that I had just taken, I had found my boyfriend from high school, after going through the alien abduction research. He was a smart guy, but I found him unimaginably dull during the trip. Like, he was the most boring person I could possibly imagine spending any time with. And I think a lot of that had been what I had been through in the year, and that I was working with other experiencers, and that I was in a support group, and that all of these strange things were happening, and I couldn't share any of it with him. And when I tried, he just looked at me like he had no idea how to respond. And I thought, okay, this guy can't even think creatively enough to make a response. He is the dullest individual. And so there was something wrong with that. Like, I was judging that. So anyway, as all of that illusion of not okayness dropped away, I felt like I was completely infused with love. I was completely loved. I was love. I was completely okay. All of the not okayness was complete illusion. It wasn't real. The real reality was love. And then the light and I started to move, and we moved in a kind of whoosh, and all of a sudden we weren't in my apartment anymore, and we were quickly going past a series of rectangular lights that were suspended in the blue. And then we were heading toward the mouth of the tunnel, and I knew what that was because I had heard about the tunnel before. My dad had died in May of the same year. He was dead for 19 minutes after a heart surgery, or after a surgery for his heart, which was actually for sleep apnea. And he coded. He was out for 19 minutes. He woke up as the person came in to wheel him to the morgue. And he was like, what am I doing here? But he had talked about the tunnel because he had gotten up to the front of it, but then he had been pulled back. So I was like, oh, there's the tunnel. And I didn't have anybody pulling me back, so I went into the tunnel and I went through it. And I got to the other side. And the tunnel was a lot like the tunnel in Fantasia. If you're really interested, at least for me, it was a lot like that journey in Fantasia where you're flying through the tunnel and the music is playing, though I don't remember any particular music playing. Got to the other end, and I was standing. I had a body, which was roughly kind of like my own self as a light body, and I was standing on this rainbow-colored crystal, which could be roughly analogous to rainbow quartz or beryl, which is talked about at the end of the Bible. And the only reason I know this is because I looked it up after the experience. And then I was walking, and there was a river cut through the crystal in front of me, and there was a bridge over the river, and there was the city winding up this hill in a spiral pattern like cities that you see in old Spain are, that they're sort of circular around the top of a hill. And it was made out of the same crystal, and there were tons of people rushing down from the upper levels of the city to come toward me. And people were coming from, as I was crossing the bridge, they were coming from the city up to greet me and just giving me tons and tons of love. And they weren't anybody I knew because I didn't really know many people who had died at that point yet. Not very many of my relatives or grandparents. Grandparents had died before, not really after. But there were people that were coming to see me, and they were excited, and it was a wonderful atmosphere of welcoming and love and excitement for me. And then as I get closer to the city, I see two figures. One is Jesus, I'm assuming the other is St. Peter. And as I stand next to Jesus, he's on my right, I start to have my life review, which is, in it, I find out that I died once before. I'd been hit by a car, and time had been reversed. And so that the accident that happened had not really happened, because what had happened is I had fallen off my bicycle, and the car had run over my head in one version of reality. But since it wasn't written, it was backed up, and so the only thing I remember happening was my life flashing before my eyes as I was flying through the air toward the front wheels of the car, and then getting up from under the car and standing up, and the guy in the car speeding away, not even checking to see if I was okay because I stood up. And it was explained to me that this was not my first near-death experience. That had been my first near-death experience, but it had been reversed. So that was really cool. That was like, wow, okay, I wondered how I got away with like the tire stopping right up against my head. And then I wasn't really mean to a lot of people when I was a kid. There were a few people I was mean to, so I had to go through that. There were like a couple. But my life review was really quick, and then Jesus said, you got to go back. I was like, oh, crap. And I don't want to. And it was explained to me that I had to go back, and as I was going back, he pointed down at the aliens working on my head and looking up, like being aware that I was up there and feeling the pressure to fix me. And Jesus was basically saying, yeah, you got to fix her. So she's not supposed to be here now. And so that's informed, it was like, and I thought about, I could come up with Jesus and aliens in the same experience. And I did. But, it was good for me. It made me stop feeling so sorry for myself. One of the things that I've tried to do in this life is get more of that sense of feeling of love, for everybody, and love for myself, and this understanding of that, the not okayness is part of the illusion. The reality is love. And yeah.
Well, it's very interesting, and I find that people that I've talked to who have had the near death reminds me of our buddy Eugene Braxton, where just from the kind of person he was, where he had all that, all the astro traveling going on ever since he was a kid, and just assumed that was normal to everybody. When he actually died, he describes it stepping back, looking at himself, and just it was like a continuation of his astro traveling. And then he went through, all the different steps and stuff that we're going to talk to Dr. Hill about. And for those in the chat rooms, I have posted Dr. Hill's website up. It is www.neardeath and then EXPPSY. Again, that's neardeath EXPPSY.com. So when Dr. Hill comes on in about 12 minutes, we'll be able to read along. We'll be able to see what we're talking about, and some of the other links, and his blog and his book and all sorts of things about Dr. Roy Hill. But it is interesting. All the paranormal investigators, the psychic investigators that I've spoken to that are more world-renowned, Marianne Morgan, and all of them, that was one thing they had in common, was a near-death experience. In fact, Marianne Morgan had 6 of them, or 4 of them, as you were. She actually died 4 times, and she knew kind of when they were coming. She knew one was going to happen on a horse. She was riding the horse, and just before it happened, she said, "Oh, here it comes." So she knew it was going to happen. Is that, now you only had one, did you, Elizabeth?
Well, there had been one before. It hadn't been my first time down the tunnel, but because they reversed the time stream, and I don't know how they did this. I mean, we really need to get somebody on who has had some experience of a sort of divine intervention where time gets reset, or you're all of a sudden in a different time stream, because the way it was explained to me is that a lot of people who were coming to greet me had expectations that I was going to be there, because I fell under this car when I was 15, and so it was 9 years later that I was having this very conscious near-death experience that I remembered most of it, and then the rest of it came back over a period of months, a few months, not that long, just through calming my mind and doing a little, self-calming hypnosis. It was easy for me to remember it, so I wasn't missing as many bits and pieces as I might otherwise be. But from the time that happened when I was 15, I didn't remember any of that, but I did become much more psychic after that event, and that was something that, because my family didn't believe in that, we weren't talking about it, but it was something I wrote down in my dream journals. I had more telepathy. I had more kids at school coming up to me asking me for help with their problems, basically asking me for healing after that event. And so I think that something had happened like they said it had, and that I had met certain people in heaven, but I didn't remember any of it. So 24 was the second time. A lot of abductees will have near-death experiencers. One of the people that you had on, I can't remember his name because I'm drawing a blank. He's had several, and because there's intervention, like the aliens don't necessarily want to lose their abductees, so sometimes there will be not just divine intervention, but if you're an abductee, you might have an alien intervention, which is
the second team gets called in.
Yeah, the second team, and is that the team that ran the clock back? We don't know. Was it the alien team, or was it the angelic team, or, was it the God team, or does it really matter? Was it just who was available that day? Well, the fire department's out, so, here's search and rescue. So, it's...
which is kind of weird. We talk to people like Monica Holy, who is one of those... what do they call them? Edge workers or something, where she just, her spirit gets called over to pull somebody in off a curb. So they don't get, fringe worker or fringe dweller.
Fringe worker.
Yeah. The fringe dweller. Okay, we can't get the angels. We can't get the good aliens or the bad aliens. Let's wake up Monica and send her, and she can lift the car off the guy's chest. It's an interesting mix of people we've had on, and
I remember that interview, and I really agree with that. I've read for people who've done that, and it's been reported to me that I did that in my 20s too. I had somebody who had a sick daughter. She was the security guard for the building that I worked in downtown Boston, and her daughter had a very, very high fever and was very, very sick, and she was praying to God for help and assistance, and she said, "No word of a lie, you floated through my window, you went over to my daughter, you put your hands on her head, and you put your hands on her chest, and you blew on her, and her fever went down." And she got better, like she started getting better immediately, and then you left. And I'm like, hey, I can float.
Totally ignoring what you did, but what do you mean I can float?
I could float. I floated through a window. I wonder what kind of, was I on a beam of light? It's like, well, I could be considered to look kind of angelic. She was like, no, it was you. She pulled me aside at work and said, no, it was you. And it was just the weirdest thing. And I was like, well, all right, then I guess it was me. But then I've read for other people who do what Monica does on a consistent basis. And it does take a toll on them, because they're often out working at night, and then they go to work and they have their kids and they do their family, and so sometimes they get tired. So.
Oh, well, that is one of the interesting things. You reminded me of Peter Pan a bit, but coming through and helping somebody. But I probably would like to talk to some more of those fringe dwellers and see what else they have in common. And what's interesting in having a show like this is that over the years you interview a number of people that have a specific divination, and when you go through it, it actually overlaps with somebody else who just phrases it differently, or they have similar experiences, and it all kind of comes together like that. But goodness, it's really like everybody's exactly the same. We're going through the same kind of events in their lives, looking at it again, like looking at a car accident, 20 people looking at the car accident, you're looking at it from different angles, and then have a different way to describe it based on, your use of the English language, your angle you were on, and what your experience was with car accidents. So we all describe it differently, maybe give it a different name, but it's all the same thing.
Yeah, there is, I doubt that. I think Monica has coined the term fringe dweller for herself, but it's such an individual, and she's seen other people. I remember that from her talk. But, I doubt that there are a bunch of them calling themselves fringe dwellers, because, everybody's going to, they are going to talk about it in a different way, and some people are going to, just be like, oh, that's just a thing that happens, or not remember anything.
A couple of 100 years ago, we called them witches. And if she's not looking, I'll call her a witch too. No, I'm kidding. She's a lovely person, but it is something that is fascinating, how what you describe and what somebody else may describe, looking at the same thing, is what you have in common. A near-death experience that left you more psychically aware, a higher vibration, a higher energy, whatever you'd like to call it. But it's personal to you, but it's also similar to what happened to other people.
Right. I just wondered why all of a sudden all the kids were, all of a sudden I seemed to be like the person people confided in or asked for help. I was like, I barely know you. It would be people that I didn't really consider myself good friends with would show up. I'd be like, okay, all right.
Well, so that would be just like the empath. Your energy became so high, you got all the low energy people coming up and plugging in.
Yeah, plugging in, getting a little bit of a download of the love. That was probably resonating a bit more with the love by that time. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, and it's the one you experienced, right? Yeah. So it is yours. Yeah, that's good. That is good, and you stick with that story, because if you falter either way, then we'll have groups of people saying that you're a fraud and that you have to be, get those people out again.
Well, it's been 26 years, so pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, pretty well done.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Pretty much know what it is. That's what it is. So, Roy Hill's coming, and we got to take a break before he gets on here to talk about what he's learned. And
his book, Psychology and the Near-Death Experience, Searching for God. And again, his website that I've put up on both chat rooms, and for those listening and not on a chat room, it is www.neardeathexpsy.com. Again, www.neardeathexpsy.com. And we're going to take our break, and we'll be back with Dr. Roy Hill. Thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Thank you, James. I'll see you next week.
You certainly will. And you take care of yourself.
All right, you too. Big hugs. See you later.
Bye-bye.
AP Radio News. I'm Carlotta Bradley. Police shootings of black men in Louisiana and Minnesota were followed by calls from black militant groups and others to seek vengeance against officers. Almost immediately, several officers were attacked, including the 5 killed by a sniper in Dallas. In Louisiana, authorities in Baton Rouge say 30 to 40 people were arrested Sunday night at an unscheduled protest against last week's police killing of a black man there. Governor John Bel Edwards was asked if he's worried about hate groups or other instigators coming in and disrupting peaceful protests.
There are people who will, from outside of Louisiana, who will seek to use this as a way to elevate themselves and their organizations, whether it's for recruiting purposes or whatever serves their particular purposes at the time. But at this point in time, we're not especially concerned that there's an awful lot of coordination going on from outside the state.
Earlier, there were other arrests after protests in Louisiana and Minnesota. President Obama is back in Washington after cutting short his European trip because of the sniper attack in Dallas that killed 5 police officers and wounded 7 others during a protest march Thursday. The president will go to Dallas on Tuesday. 3 homes and 3 buildings have been destroyed by a wildfire in Boulder County, Colorado. Even so, Forest Supervisor Monty Williams says previous efforts to clear brush and dead trees are helping fire crews.
These are fuels treatment areas, so these are places actually where we're reducing the density to make it easier for firefighters to be able to put the fire out, and it's working.
2 campers from Alabama have been arrested in connection with the fire for allegedly leaving a poorly extinguished campfire smoldering as winds whipped in the nearby area. This is AP Radio News. It's a secret no more. The AP's Jamie Fryer has the weekend box office results.
We can find our way home. We are descended from the mighty wolf.
The Secret Life of Pets opens at number 1 this weekend. The animated family film takes in more than $103 million. It features the voices of comics Kevin Hart and Louis C.K.
He's Tarzan. You're Jane. He'll come for you.
The Legend of Tarzan was second this weekend. Finding Dory drops to third after 3 weeks at number 1. I'm Jamie Fryer.
Singer Shaka Khan and her sister have entered a drug rehab program to battle their addictions to prescription drugs. Khan says the death of her good friend Prince in April helped hasten her decision to get help. In a statement, the 63-year-old Grammy Award-winning star says she had been battling an addiction to the same medication that led to Prince's death. I'm Carlotta Bradley, AP Radio News.
It's time to go live on Spaced Out Weekend.
13, please. Oh, hi, Kevin. Oh, is that the time? Kevin, my friend, don't you find that watch just a little bit loud? Well, I certainly hope our buddy Bumblefoot is playing when we get there. Oh, you stinky big bundle of hair. I said Bumblefoot, not Bigfoot. Oh, it's going to be a long night.
It's time to head to the 13th floor of the old log cabin for Spaced Out Weekend with James Tyson. You can tweet James at James Tyson SOR. You can find him on Instagram, Spaced Out Weekend, as well as on Facebook. On YouTube, our channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and you can check out our website, spacedoutradio.com.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. Who is it behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong? Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere. Watch
ladies and gentlemen. The story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
And now, perched high in his captain's chair, way above the clouds, here's James Tyson.
Hello, thank you, David, and welcome everyone to Spaced Out Weekend, Day 2. So we can all guess which day of the weekend that is. It is I, James Tyson, still broadcasting from my little log cabin on the 13th floor of the Spaced Out Radio Network, here in the paranormal portals of the lower left Canadian coast. And tonight with me, I have a very, very special guest. We have Dr. Roy Hill. Now, Dr. Hill obtained his bachelor's degree in psychology at University of Arizona and his doctorate degree in clinical psychology at Nova Southeastern University. He has worked as a psychologist in corrections, both as a clinician and supervisor for over 19 years. Following several life-changing experiences, Dr. Hill delved into the topic of near-death experiences. A book followed his immersion, and that is The Psychology and the Near-Death Experiences Searching for God, published by White Crow Books. As his mission and his passion, Roy looks forward to writing more on various near-death experience subjects. He lives in Colorado with his wife and son, and we've got him here. Hello, Dr. Hill. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, James.
Oh, thank you. It's a fascinating subject, and as we were talking to Elizabeth Anglin earlier, it's nice. It's actually wonderful to get different views on the topic, and I can go through your website at the near-death exppsy.com. That's EXP like experience and PSY like psychology.com, and it's a very easy little website to bounce through. It'll give you some bit of an idea of what his book's about. There's some quotes, there's a blog, and also connects you to some upcoming events. And one of the things I need to know is what happened in your life that took you from the doctoral kind of black and white science of looking at delving into fact, and how did you get off into this kind of invisible world almost of the spiritual and the near death?
Well, it does seem a bit odd. I did come from a very scientific background. My father and brother are both physicists, and my mom's a geologist, and I was already the black sheep of the family for being a psychologist, a social science. So, I went to a traditional program and practiced traditional psychology up to a few months ago. Really, my interest in near-death experiences started about 16 years ago, and there's a little bit of a story to take a couple minutes to describe how I got into it. But I was working at a federal prison in North Carolina. I had an inmate whose sister had passed away, and he wasn't doing well, so I put him on suicide watch. And about 2 days later, he said he was better. And as a psychologist, I asked the question, why now? Which is always a good question when somebody gets better all of a sudden. And he told me that his deceased sister was talking to him, and she was telling him that he didn't need to be on suicide watch because she was in a fine place, and that he had his life to live, and he wasn't serving anybody well being on suicide watch, and that she was allowed to be with him to help him through this tough time. So as a psychologist, the first thing you might think when somebody says they're talking to their deceased sister is that this guy is psychotic and mentally ill. But the odd thing about it, James, is that when psychotic people have hallucinations, they're usually negative and cryptic and never helpful. This was all the opposite. And his mental status looked better. He was eating well, looked animated and so forth. So I took him off watch under observation on the unit. I talked to him the next morning, and he was still doing well. I asked him if he was still talking to his sister, and he said yes. And be careful what you ask for sometimes, because I asked, well, what is she telling you? And he says, well, she's telling me that you don't believe me, and so that you shall believe she has a message for you. And coming from a kind of a psychologist / Baptist background, I had my hair standing up straight. Like, what's on my arm? What's going on? I said, well, what's her message? And he said, quarter. I said, quarter? What does that mean? It's like quarter or something? Quarter as in the coin? And he confirmed it was quarter of the coin. I said, well, what does that mean? He says, I don't know. She won't tell me. So he leaves, and I get another inmate come in, and this guy's a white Muslim and didn't run in the same circles as the other guy. And he was ranting about the hypocrisy of the United States. He looks me in the eye and says, Dr. Hill, do you know what's written on a quarter? I said, in God we trust. He goes, that's right. And then I felt a rush come over me. And nobody's asked that question of me prior or since. So because of the timing, I bring the other guy in a little later and asked him if his deceased sister was telling him anything else. And he said, yes. She's telling me that your wife is pregnant, you're going to have a son, and he will be born on Christmas Day. Well, I knew the first two were true. Perhaps he overheard it, but unlikely. But really it rested on whether my son was going to be born on Christmas Day. Well, he was born on January 7th. Move forward about 11 years, another institution here in Colorado. It was really bothering me. And so I thought about it, and I had an epiphany. And that epiphany was that first there was a declaration I didn't have faith. Then there was a statement I needed to trust in God and have faith. Maybe this was all a test of faith. So in a leap of faith, I looked up Christmas Day and January 7th. Knowing full well, as everybody does, Christmas Day is December 25th. Lo and behold, a lot of stuff came up when I Googled it. Turns out we use the Roman calendar, the Julian calendar, but there's a Christian calendar called the Gregorian calendar that predates the Julian calendar, at least in Christendom. And the Orthodox churches, such as Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, so forth, still use the Christian calendar. And Christmas Day is January 7th. So with that, I thought to myself, my goodness, this has to be true. And I couldn't go to Christian friends because they would just think it was demonic. So I knew that there was a broader spirituality I needed to investigate and immerse myself in to explain this. Because I felt that this revelation from this deceased sister was allowed for me for a purpose, but I didn't know what it was. I knew about near-death experiences. Like many people, I read Raymond Moody's book back in college. And I knew about the NDERF website, which stands for Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. At the time, there was 3,000 anonymous accounts. Now there's 4,000. I read through pretty much all of them of course, the longer ones, the more meaty ones, I read more carefully. And I realized that there was a whole spirituality out there that now made sense. It was more complicated and more deep, but it also jived a lot better with my own worldview and thinking about people and so forth. So I started corresponding with the Longs, who do the website and also have books on their own. And they encouraged me to write a book, and I did. And so since then, it's just kind of exploded to the point where I've retired from my government job as a psychologist, and I'm writing and promoting my book.
That is it? Like, you've completely walked away from the the practice now?
Well, yeah, I had a government job that paid well. I was the chief psychologist, actually, oversaw a sex offender program, a couple drug programs, a forensic program where we did reports for federal court. I walked away from that. I turned 50, and that's in the United States, that's law enforcement. You can retire at 50, so retired with some benefits.
Nice.
Yeah, so, I don't know where this is going to go. I may go back to some sort of practice, but I figure I would give this my best effort first.
Perfect. Yeah, I've got 28 years in as the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and and we could retire at 20 years into it with an average good pension. But, you get in when you're 19, retire at 49, you better find a hobby.
Yes, right.
Yeah, but that's
it's a bit of a leap of faith for me to do this. But,
isn't it a leap of faith when you actually sign that document and clean out your desk and eat the cake and high five all the prisoners as you walk out? But friends of mine who are psychic, and a few of them, actually a couple of them, work at a forensic unit. For what used to be called the criminally insane, but it's for the people who were found not criminally responsible for very, very, very serious crimes. And the stuff that they actually see around those people is fascinating. The contact they're having with, as family comes through, past family, that's a whole other, there's a book you could travel around the country interviewing people who are sensitive, who work at these locations, even some of the nurses at the psych units that are sensitive. Once you can, get them to open up and not use the real name, because who's going to have coffee with them the next day?
Well, absolutely. When I even before I had this mystical experience, whenever I walked, usually worked at mediums and low security institutions, but I've been into high security institutions and not particularly sensitive, even more so before. I could feel the anger and the hatred. I could sense it. And pretty much everybody who worked there said they could. So the negative energy is so strong that even non-sensitive people pick it up.
Yeah. It's weird. I've been to those places, and I went to one the day after a full moon, and they were still cleaning up. Like their clients were rubbing feces on the walls and going, well, lunatics, really. But not all of them. There's a couple. Really, if you had 500 people in there, half a dozen might act out on a full moon. It wasn't just some great event that disturbed everybody, but it sure has an energy when you walk into those places. And the other thing, too, is people pass away in there. It could be suicide, or medical issues, but there's still that energy that it's almost like feeling there's a big hole, and you're standing in the edge of a big hole, and you got that weird feeling that you could fall in.
Yes, and I felt as if there could be some danger. Nobody had to ask me to be careful. I was very careful, and it was more than just. It was just more than the environment around me. It was something I picked up. Absolutely.
Were you sensitive as a child?
I was not. Even now, I'm not particularly sensitive in the way a lot of people, psychics, are sensitive. My sensitivities are different. I grew up like I said, in a very scientific background, and Even though I believed in God, really, if it wasn't a good materialistic explanation of something, then I was very skeptical. I've come full circle and believe very much differently. What I do perceive is light and images, especially as I've fallen asleep. Psychologists call the hypnagogic state. It's that kind of meditative state between wakefulness and sleep. I get images from beyond. I see light. I have what I call vision dreams from beyond. But what I don't pick up are beings around me that some people claim to. So I make a horrible psychic. The spiritual beings visit me in my dream and during this hypnagogic state, but I don't really control it. I can ask a question, and sometimes they'll answer it. But that's kind of the extent of my abilities. Mostly, I like to write about it.
Yeah. And that's your outlet. That's the outlet that you've got to fall back on. And your writing is, well, I look at it as your writing is your art. You can build and describe better because that is a function of who you are as a scientific mind.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's a good point. I always feel at ease writing, and I feel like I can massage the words where I can't when I'm talking. And unfortunately, because I do pay attention to words, a lot of books, publishers want their authors to write at probably at a ninth grade level, but I try to write a little above that, which appeals to some people and others it doesn't. But more than an outlet, really, I think that I'm trying to do God's work. And what I learned by reading so many near-death experiences is that, a lot of people misunderstand God and misunderstand the purpose of life, why they're here on life, what is the meaning of life. And the problem with that is that as our technology increases and there's more pressures in the world, we're bringing the earth at the razor's edge, and we can't continue fighting each other in war and destroying things around us, because then it's going to be too late at some point. And so what I'm trying to do is to be a small foot soldier, I guess, in a new spiritual revolution, not a revolution based on violence, but on love, and trying to bring people into a higher state so we can continue as a species and evolve instead of destroying it all.
Could I ask you what year this kind of all came to you?
Really, probably about 4 years ago. Not that long ago.
Yeah, I wasn't going to put the words in your mouth, but 2012 was a real shift in a lot of people awakening to various aspects of spirituality. That's when mine hit.
Interesting. Yeah, that's
mine hit in 2012.
There could be something to that. But I really believe that near-death experiences is one of those mechanisms for the divine to awaken us. Because if you think about it, what more clear way to get a message from somebody who's actually been to heaven or the spiritual realm, however you want to say it, and seen it firsthand. And near-death experiences are more than lights and tunnels and saying hi to deceased loved ones and good feelings. Many of these individuals who have deep experiences are coming back with incredible information about the other side. They're coming back with incredible information about the organization of the universe. and our purpose here on Earth. Never before has there been accounts of what heaven is. People guess. It's not in any religious books, but yet we have now millions of people who are reporting from the other end. There's been some recent research from Canada, United States, Australia, and Europe, separate research that based on surveys, anywhere from 3 to 7% of the population has had some sort of near-death experience. Now, some of it is just a quick out-of-body experience, and some of them are deep. But let's say 5% of Americans that had some sort of near-death experience. That's 15 million people in this country alone. Now, why is it we have all these people having them now, and it was very rare before? Part of it was people were afraid to come forward, and part of it was medical technology has increased. But that only explains part of the phenomenon. I think the other part is that more people are having near-death experiences because the divine is intervening to bring a spiritual awakening to the world as you speak.
Yeah, and I was up at, and this is going to sound like voodoo to a point, but my listener understands. I was up at Mount Shasta last August, and I was speaking to a lady there who, in her firm belief, is there something's going to happen in the year 2020. And we are now being pointed in the direction of waking up to the understanding, but it's not going to all happen overnight because our little human existence and what we do day to day isn't going to be able to take it. So there are a few people like yourself and, like others with the near death who these are the baby steps that are coming in, and we're getting the information. We're getting it written down and distributed. We're getting you on not only podcasts, but terrestrial radio, into lectures, invited on, whatever media we can distribute your findings around. And I think that it's going to be coming, like you say, there is something changing, and I think this is going to be becoming more apparent, and more of these people are going to come out. One reason is that it's going to happen more, and the other reason is the more of us talking about it, the less awkward those other people feel.
Absolutely. 20, 30 years ago, people would have been very scared to come forward, being thought of as crazy or mentally ill. And part of my mission, if you want to call it, is that I want to reach out to health professionals, mental health professionals, and differentiate between a true mental illness and a psychotic reaction and a spiritual experience. Superficially, they have something in common, and that is an outside voice is speaking to them. But that's where the commonality ends. The two are extremely different, and if I can educate emergency room personnel, hospice workers, mental health professionals, doctors, and so forth, then I think I can do this a big service.
Yeah. Well, it is something that is going to be... I'm sorry. I keep hitting the wrong button here. It is something that is, and I really feel it in my gut, that this is something that's going to be coming up more and more. And if your research will never stop, you're going to be getting new information and most likely experiences that are more and more descriptive. And that's just a gut feeling I have. We're going to come back with more from Dr. Roy Hill and more on his near-death experience research right after this.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Hi there, this is Elizabeth Anglin, and on the last Monday of every month, I join Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's Cosmic Passport. We delve into everything from extraterrestrial contact to animal communication. It's a lot of fun, and every month it's something different and exciting. I would love it if you would join us. You can hear and learn from my experiences, and I'd like to know about yours as well. Cosmic Passport on spacedoutradio.com.
Fairies, Bigfoot, dogmen, trolls, goblins? Hey, if it's cryptid in any way, I'm looking into it. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, also known as Spaced Out Radio's Crypto Guru. Join me every second Wednesday of the month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will talk about the stories people call tall tales. I will fill you in on the latest sightings and the hidden histories that are causing quite a stir. You can find everything at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is your medium Joanna from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Is the 24-hour world starting to wear you down? Let me from Rivulet Reiki and Ratings lend you a hand. Hi, this is Jolene, and if you're in need of Reiki or a realm reading, come to my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr, and let us help you out. At Rivulet, I specialize in healing your body, mind, and soul, no matter where you are. And be sure to check out the Rivulet R&R Facebook page for your best deals. Remember, it's time for you to make some time for you.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Spaced Out Weekend with James Tyson can be found at spacedoutradio.com. Head to our website where you can join the Space Travelers and sign up for your new membership. You can also follow James on Twitter at James Tyson SOR. Now, back to our paranormal guru, James Tyson.
Thank you, Dave. Welcome back, everyone. We are still with Dr. Roy Hill, and he is the author of Psychology and the Near-Death Experience, Searching for God. Now, when you started off on this adventure into writing the book, your material that you researched, were these primarily just stories secondhand, or did you interview anybody that experienced these firsthand, I guess I should say? Did you actually interview the people, or did you just gather a lot of the data that exists right now?
Well, James, I did both. It was really interesting because in addition to the 3,000 near-death experiences I read, I had about 6 or 7 people who I've met, not really even looking for in particular, who had near-death experiences. And a few of those near-death experiences were quite profound. And I think I use pretty much all of those folks somewhere in my book. A few have their own chapters. And so I can only think that this was not accidental, that the synchronistic event was divinely inspired or nudged somehow. So I did do some interviews with people, and when you talk to these folks, it's just so amazing because they are so I guess immersed in their experience that they're so transformed and impacted. They could go on for hours and hours about their experience. They just light up. So you can tell that it was really life-changing for most of these folks.
Yeah, I could imagine. Like, life-changing is a really nice way of putting it. It's like teaching somebody to remember something by hitting on the head with a hammer.
Yeah, and for most people, it's been a positive transformation, but not always. And it's a mixed bag for most. You would think that having an experience like that and coming back would I'll just be just filled with love, and they'd be so much happier. Well, that's true in part. The first person I had a near-death talked about the near-death experience, even before I was really interested in this area, was a fellow who was a lieutenant working at the prison, and he was a guy who liked to cut up and joke and in an off-color way. He was always the life of the party, and he went missing for a while from work. And then he came back, and he was kind of in a far-off post. And another psychologist and I walked up and said hello. And he said, hey, can you talk to me for a minute? And I said, sure. And so he said, well, I had a heart attack, and I saw the other side. I'm really struggling with it because my wife doesn't understand why I want to go back. She thinks that I want to leave her, and that's not it. It's just that it's so much better over there. I want to go back, and I'm having trouble adjusting, coming back to this life. And he was no longer the cut-up, funny man that he was before. He was a very serious guy after his near-death experience. And he's not alone. There's a number of people who really struggle coming back because on the other side, people feel that there's such a love and amazing bliss. I had one person tell me it's like swimming in a swimming pool of love. Another person told me if you added up all the loving moments in your life and put them all together, it wouldn't equal the amount of love for each moment up there in the spiritual realm. And so isn't it ironic that these very people sometimes who are afraid of death, and people's fear of death, causes all sorts of existential anxiety and problems in their life. But those who have a near-death experience go up there and they're told, you have to go back, you have more work to do. And they have a tantrum. They kick and scream and says, no, I don't want to go back. And sometimes they say you need to go back because you've got more work to do, and sometimes they're forced to go back. And some of them come back feeling guilt that they were willing to leave their kids, their family, and leave everything on earth behind, all the responsibilities, just to stay up there, which is a pretty amazing experience.
Well, I have two friends of mine who run my motorcycle group. I belong to a veterans group. Both had jammers. Sorry, it's a cop thing. Both had heart attacks. Now, they both found themselves floating over top of the rooms, doing the typical, what you hear a lot of people say, I was floating in the surgery and I could see down what was going on.
Right.
Both of them looked and they wanted to go, and they had loved ones. They could hear them from the other side saying, stay there, it's not your time.
Right.
Two different people, to different hospitals, did not share those stories with each other, because it's not something you really want to bring up over a beer with your buddies. But once it was pulled out, they both said, yeah, the same thing happened to me. Now,
exactly. And if you read thousands of them, they're all saying the same thing. It's not just two. It's thousands, probably millions are saying the same thing.
Now, when you do these interviews with the people, and you're the ones you can interview as opposed to the ones you're just reading about, where you are looking at it as the psychologist side of things, and you're pulling information out, are you finding that during your interview you're getting more information than there was on the original report, or is it pretty standard?
Basically, the folks I interviewed just sort of came out of the blue. They didn't come from any website. So when I interviewed them, it was difficult to do the interview within 3 hours.
Yeah.
Because people were, once they trusted me and understood I was trying to give a voice to our ambassadors from heaven, a respectful voice. I often call people with near-death experiences our ambassadors from heaven, because that's who I think they are. And once they see that respect, then they really open up and they just want to talk and talk. So, it's the time goes by fast for me as well, because I'm just really fascinated with their stories. It's a very engaging conversation.
When you put all this information together and you've studied it and you've looked at it and the book is produced, is that based, do you then make an opinion based on the information you've been provided, or are you more or less nailing it down as from fact to fact based on, like I would think, if 5 people told me the same story, I'm going to say that story's, that one's going to be true, or that vision of how it happened is more accurate than the one person who saw something different. I'd almost cut those out of the equation.
Right, that's a good point. There are a few outlier stories in the near-death experience literature, but a lot less than you might think. Really, when I'm going through hundreds and hundreds and then thousands, the same themes keep coming up over and over and over. And so I'm treating it as something that's real. Mm-hmm. And let me put it this way. I'm a scientist, and I understand that if you're going to do research, you need to isolate a variable. Going to measure a variable, you have to isolate all the extraneous variables and nullify their effect. Then you measure it, and then other people need to reproduce it. And that's science. Now, there are some scientific ways to get to near-death experiences, kind of indirectly. You can't really measure them directly. You can't measure a soul, or you can't measure heaven or anything like this. But here's the difference between near-death experiences and religion. In Christianity alone, you have 30,000 different sects, right? And then you have 5 major religions, but probably dozens or 100 more religions out there. So you have a variety of beliefs. You don't find that with near-death experiences. The Longs did some research on the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, where they took hundreds of their samples, and they looked at some core elements, and they found that people's near-death experiences did not vary regardless of age, culture, religion, language, or anything like that. So I have a psychologist friend of mine. He's a Iranian, and he's doing research in Iran right now with Shia Muslims and their near-death experiences. And he already has some data back that shows that they have the same experiences as we do, as Christians or agnostics. So there are superficial differences between near-death experiences based on culture and religion, but those superficial things have to do with how heaven is presented, not with the underlying elements of the near-death experience itself. So it was very easy to go through these topics. When I'm going over people I interview or going over these thousands of submissions, I just write down the commonalities and then I organize it. And then I write a book. So, you know, let me put it this way. If we're a policeman, right? So let's say you had some guy you caught smashing and grabbing into a store, takes out a TV. He goes to court. He said, yeah, I saw him do that, arrested him. Okay, well, maybe not. He'll be convicted. What if 3 other people saw it? The same thing. Maybe he will be convicted. What if 20 people saw it? Probably be convicted. What if 100 people saw it? What if 1,000 people saw it? What if 15 million people saw the same thing? I bet you that jury's going to convict that guy. Now, if you have 15 million people in the United States saying the same thing, should we not give that some credibility?
Darn right. Yeah. And that's one of your best ways of presenting the argument.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Because you really don't get that with religion. And I'm not here bashing religion at all. I'm just saying here are firsthand accounts of death, and it has a different quality than religion.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we have to look at as it's overwhelming. The information is overwhelming, so why are we discounting it? I understand that there's that one side of Christianity who believes anything like that is just a trick of Satan.
Right.
They put up the wall, don't talk to me about it, and, you know, it's blasphemy, get out of my house. And, you know, it's unfortunate because those people have near-death experiences too, and unless they have somebody to talk to, they're kind of have to put the lid on it and not talk to anybody about it. But you know, we have these doors open now. Other people are now saying it, and it's going to pour in. And from work like you have done, it opens these doors wider and wider for people to not only understand that what they've gone through isn't crazy, and for those people who haven't gone through it, that gives them something to think about and look at the facts behind it. Your study, you call them ambassadors. Now, of course, that is based on that's more your opinion based on your upbringing and your knowledge, or is that based on what you believe, or as you were, what you hear them telling you, those people in the interviews telling you?
Well, I'm saying ambassadors because a lot of times folks that have very deep near-death experiences and they interact with other spiritual beings, they're showing different things, and they're told to go share it when they come back. And this goes back to the need for spiritual transformation on the earth, and that I believe that these people who have near-death experiences are ambassadors from the other side to help us, as you say, bring an awakening in the world right now when it's desperately needed. So that's why I call them ambassadors. Now, not everybody is given that message. The vast majority of people with near-death experiences have brief experiences. But even their stories, even though brief, really help humanity in that, you know, too much fuss is made over death. People fear death way too much. And if they can come and say, look, there is no death, heaven is home, earth is just a school. And the purpose here on earth is to do well in this school, to learn how to love and to learn the things that we lack. And if they can convey that information, then maybe people will treat their lives differently. Our lives are very important.
What is your opinion on things like spirit guides and personal angels? Or do you have an opinion on something like that?
Yeah, I do. In fact, I have a couple chapters in my book, and I talk about when people have near-death experiences and meet their spiritual guides, I report what does this mean and how do they relate to us, both in heaven and here on earth. So spiritual guides typically are deceased loved ones, and they are helping us through our journey. Most people don't perceive them. There is kind of a maxim or rule in heaven that you cannot interfere with free will here on earth. And so the best that spiritual guides can do is give us a gentle nudge, but at the end, it's our choices to nudge or to be nudged or not. And it's easier to nudge folks who are open to the possibility of spiritual guides than people who are closed to the idea. But the nudge can come from a dream, a thought, a feeling, a synchronicity, and for rare instances, something more direct, like a visitation of some sort. And that's particularly happens when people have complicated grief reactions, when a loved one passes, and they're just not getting over it. Sometimes, not always, that loved one is allowed to come back and say, look, I'm okay. You know, you can get on with your life, so to speak, put it more delicately probably, and, you know, we love you. So what's interesting is that when people meet their deceased relatives up there, they manifest themselves in ways that they look maybe in their 20s and 30s in their prime. Of course, they don't really look that way. People with near-death experiences, everything in that dimension is made out of energy. But kind of in the basis of quantum physics, reality is created by mind rather than the other way around. So they can manifest as deceased loved ones, and they greet the NDE person in celebration, and they're so happy that they're come, and they tell them that they love them, and they're always with them. So if you have a deceased relative, a mother or a grandparent, you know, who you miss, and says, oh, I wish I was with them, you can at least know that your loved one is with you in a way that's stronger than ever, even in life, because they're with you at every moment. They know your every thought and feeling, and they love you, and they're trying to help you. And these are the spiritual guides.
Yeah, I find that I communicate with my spirit guides. I've also been told that one of my oldest guides is about 30,000 years old, and he wasn't earthbound ever. It was a spirit that was never been earthbound. And then I had a photograph of the three of them standing over my right shoulder, and a family member, as you say, standing to my left on a camera that a friend of mine has that takes pictures of your aura and things. Well, these four beings showed up, and I had a shaman, Derek White Skycloud, who was a shaman, very, very psychic man, walked by, looked at the photograph and said, oh, your spirit guides? They're ETs. And he walked away. And I said, Derek, get back here. What do you mean they're ETs?
That's interesting.
Yeah. So there are different ways of looking at it. The question then is, just because he uses the word ET, does that mean they're from another realm, another planet, or are they those guides that have come down, we'll call it, from heaven? So yeah. So what are these? Are they angelic, but just coming across as something that's never been terrestrial?
Here I'm treading in areas in which I really haven't found a lot of answers from the NDE research. There's a whole New Age kind of movement into angels and so forth. And that resonates with near-death experiences to a degree because people do report angels up there. And that they do report that they're very old beings and beings that maybe have never been on the earth. So, and whenever the question comes up, are there other planets and beings out there? The answer is yes, like sands on the beach, scattered throughout the galaxies or even universes if there's more than one. So, but the difference is that people who have near-death experiences very, very rarely meet extraterrestrial beings. They usually meet either angelic beings, Jesus, or deceased loved ones. The fact that your spiritual guides are extraterrestrials is pretty unique, I think. And but I say this: all things are possible with God. And there's a reason for everything. And maybe it's consistent with your mission on this earth, doing spaced out radio. That seems to fit kind of an extraterrestrial theme. You might be interested in that sort of thing. So I'm not trying to be flip. I'm actually being serious. That maybe because of your mission here on earth and doing what you're doing, your spiritual guides are different than most people's. Very possible.
Yeah, it's the check, like you were saying, this medium that we're using, this radio podcast, is something that the fellow who started this, Dave Scott, who's here Monday to Friday, he got information, we'll say spiritually, that he was supposed to open something up where people could talk about what we're talking about and just keep the conversation growing. Mm-hmm. And if you've noticed, since 2011, primarily 2012, we've been inundated with anything from paranormal investigators to spiritual podcasts or spiritual terrestrial radio shows.
Right.
And television shows. So it's really increased. And I think we all have a piece of the puzzle. You have a piece of the puzzle. I have a piece of the puzzle. And we're all wandering around trying to find out where our piece fits. And eventually we're all going to put it all together.
I hope so. And that was kind of a goal of my book is, there's a lot of books out there, near-death experiences, but nobody tried to put it together in all these complexities together, and that was what I tried to do in a kind of a unique way.
Yeah, I think you're one of like two books that I would look at as a near-death experience book, based on something, an amalgamation of a lot of information, and then, like we say, taking the overlapping points and sitting down and looking at them, saying, person on this side of the continent or on this side of the planet and the other side of the planet having the same experience, seeing the exact same thing in the middle of the experience. The front end and the back end might be different, but that core chunk, you can't fake that. Whether it's something, if somebody read a book on, that's the other thing. If I read a book on near-death experiences and I had a near-death experience and I said, it's exactly the same that's in the book, well, then there's that iffy thing. Well, was it really, or were you just imagining that because you read the book? But these people haven't read your book, so
right.
They're the subjects of the book. So,
well, even 5-year-olds have the same kind of experience. 3, 4, 5-year-olds, and they're not old enough to watch Oprah usually. So
yeah. Did you ever look into the pre-birth? Any of the pre-birth stories that some people may have?
I have. I haven't read too many off the NDERF website. There are fairly rare. I have read a book recently that discussed a woman's pre-birth memories. I will say, though, what's very consistent across NDE research is that people say that they know that a lot of time and effort went to put into their mission here on Earth, and putting in the right family. Things were set up to learn the lessons they need to learn. So, so there are very interesting information from people, the very few that actually remember that process. But the vast majority of people who have near-death experiences don't remember that process.
Oh, and I think you're going to have to be somebody who's pretty open to the other side, to the other side, or to the spiritual side, to go back that far into pre-birth to remember that. We're going to come back with more from Dr. Roy Hill and near-death experience right after this.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Are you an ET experiencer, but you just don't know what's going on? Are you too timid or shy to discuss it with anyone? Maybe I can help. Join me, R. Keith Andrews, the first Friday of every month on Spaced Out Radio, and I will help you to find the answers you're looking for. Together, I will help you understand the off-worlders and the true meanings behind your experiences. All you have to do is join us in the Spaced Out Radio chat room. See you there.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick Webster Small, and I'm here to bring you the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night, live at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're looking for aliens and extraterrestrials, well, we've got them. Big and tall, short and small. You're bound to find what you're looking for, so join me on the Webster Phenomena right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr, or my Facebook page, Rivulet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings, no matter where you are. It's time for you to make time for you.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Have you ever seen a UFO, a ghost, Bigfoot, or something else weird or arcane? This is Dave Scott, host of Spaced Out Radio. Every night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, we are live for 3 hours of jam-packed information with the top guests from their field of expertise. Come take a listen and share your experiences with us. You can find everything you need at spacedoutradio.com. Are you experienced?
Have you ever wondered about those weird and strange creatures people have reported throughout history? Do you wonder if those stories are real? Me too, and that's why I started Cryptopia.us. Hey, this is Rob Morphy, crypto historian. Join me once a month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will get into the odd and bizarre reports, from the Dover Demon to hairy hominids and everything in between. I will break down what people like you and me are seeing at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to get your product to the public? Advertise with us at Spaced Out Radio. At spacedoutradio.com, you can check out our pricing and packages that best suit your budgetary needs. Whether you're a budgeted author or a company looking to expand, our listeners support the products that support spacedoutradio.com. Advertising with us is an effective way to get your message out. Contact us at info@spacedoutradio.com and get your ads out today.
James Tyson can be found on Facebook at Spaced Out Weekend. You can follow James on Instagram, Spaced Out Weekend, on YouTube, Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Twitter at James Tyson SOR. And don't forget to sign up to become a space traveler on our website, spacedoutradio.com.
Welcome back, everybody. We are with Dr. Roy Hill. We've been talking near-death experiences. Go to his website, please, www.neardeathexp, and then psy.com. Near-death, exp, psy.com. Oh, the English alphabet. I should learn that. Welcome back. We are with Dr. Roy, and before the break, we were just kind of going through the first hour was kind of going through his research, what got him into it, starting at his job as a psychologist in a penal situation. It's the psych units and things in a prison, and now writing the book and moving on. And a few of the questions that piled up in the chat rooms here, we do touch on, or your book touches on what is witnessed when the experiencer goes to quote unquote the other side, and a lot of them describe the Jesus character. And in your experience or in your studying, did they ever go beyond the Jesus character to the God energy, the God spirit?
Oh, yes. It's interesting you bring up Jesus. In the last hour, you were talking about how some of the fundamentalists, I think Christians is who you're referring to, are pretty resistant to near-death experiences, perhaps more so than any other group that I've met, which is kind of ironic because Jesus is the most frequently seen spiritual being based on the Long's research in near-death experiences. Now, if you lump all of deceased relatives together as one, that's going to be more. But any particular individual, Jesus is the most viewed. In terms of your question about God, many times people see God. In fact, God is the second most experienced being after Jesus. And God can be experienced in a variety of ways. In pure form, God is a light. And really, God is everything. And when you talk about Jesus, me, you, and so forth, when we talk about God, in a sense, that includes all of us, because our consciousness, according from near-death experience folks, is really an expression of God. We're just gifted with individuality. And I know that sounds pretty far out there, but the idea of unity and interconnection is so important, is one of the key pieces of knowledge folks are coming back from near-death experiences. Interestingly, when some people meet God, there is an interaction, and sometimes there is a merging of the small light, us, or the NDE person, into the big light. And when that happens, one's individuality just dissipates, and they just become one back with the source, which may be a better descriptive word than God, the source of everything. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when people see Jesus, Jesus comes out of the God light as well. I don't know if that really answers the question.
No, it does, and it's interesting. Like, I rather use the God source too, the source of anything, and it makes perfect sense, because in my beliefs, we are all a part of the greater source. And when biblically someone's to say, well, we were made in God's image, my own gut feeling is I don't think they're talking about, 5 fingers, 5 toes. I think it's our energy is connected. We are the same energy as God, just at a lower a tad lower of an energy source. But
but I would kind of in a way correct that, and or at least confront that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, based on our own individuality, we're a lower energy, obviously. But deep within, the real self within, we are of God. Our life journeys through tumbling through time is to discover our real self, which is of God. But we have to have the experience to learn to love, to raise our vibration to become our true self. If that makes any sense.
Oh, it does, yeah. And, I get facetious quite often, but I believe, again, it's my belief. It sounds like I'm giving testimony in court. It's my training and belief and my experience that. It's my belief that we're all connected in energy. Plants, animals, soil, absolutely. Stone, whatever. The vibration, our energy is all one. And, yes. Our meat sack, once our meat sack is used up and thrown away, our energy is still there and can go on. Which gets me to my next question. And this is outside of probably what you were studying, but do you have opinions on reincarnation or coming back?
Yes, I do, and it's actually very central to my studies. If I can first talk about our mission and the meaning of life, that will give context to the answer in your question about reincarnation. In Buddhist view or Hindu view, there's a certain karma that happens, that we live a life, and based on how we live it, when we die, we're reborn based on the karma that we lived in the previous life. So if we live a terrible life, we might be reborn as a bug or something. That's not the case with near-death experiences. Basically, heaven is home, period. Now, when you're up in heaven in your true state, you're interconnected with everything, as you say, with God and everything. And the fabric of the universe, the fabric that is of God, all of God, is based on love. And when we're up there in our real form as heirs to the kingdom, the sons and daughters of God, we are plugged into this love. So there's no hate, there's no death, there's no sickness, and all these things. It's a great place to feel bliss. But it's not a great place to learn to become the individuals we want to choose to become based on our own free will. And that's the difference. We come down here to Earth, school Earth, to learn lessons, so that we may choose love out of our own free will, not out of because we're plugged in. God doesn't want robots. God wants souls to slowly, through experiences, realize their true self as of God. Now, that's hard. Think about it. I don't want the audience to think about love as an emotion. A byproduct of love is a bliss, yeah. But love is actually hard work. It involves things like sacrifice, forgiveness, inherent respect. Those things take more than a lifetime to learn. And now we're getting to reincarnation. So let's take one of those, for example. It's easy to sacrifice for a buddy to move his furniture. But what if you have a parent who's dying of Alzheimer's and you have to quit your job to take care of that parent and watch that parent's mental faculties be lost in front of your eyes? Now that's sacrifice. Those are the types of adverse things that we learn here on Earth that are so critical to our growth. And many of us come down with 2 or 3 lessons. Indie ears say that they were told that they have 1 lesson, 2, maybe 3 to learn here on this incarnation. When we go up, some of us will learn their lessons well and some not. But we'll have more lessons to learn because eternity is a long time. Therefore, we tumble through time with certain soul groups. We come back down when we're ready to learn more lessons. And it's our choice. And nobody forces us to come down to earth. But from what I read, spiritual beings get a little tired being where they're at. And they get a little antsy and they're ready to go back down to earth or some other schoolyard in the universe to learn more lessons. So yes, that's a very, very long answer to your question, is there reincarnation? The answer is yes. And you talked about your spiritual being 3,000 years old or 30,000 years old. We're all probably pretty old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I look back, I sent my DNA in to track down the father's side of the family. My DNA goes back 30,000 years. It was first found to have been in, I guess it would be a little bit north of the Valley of the Kings, south of Cairo in Egypt.
Oh, wow.
30,000 years ago. And then it made its way through the Holy Lands up into the Balkans, up into Europe, across the top of Europe, over to Scandinavia, over to Scotland, and down into England, and eventually in the 1900s over to North America. But there's nothing before 30,000 years ago. So I'm wondering if this guy is, well, because he's never been on Earth, maybe he was somebody connected to that very first person with my DNA.
Yeah, it's an interesting speculation, definitely.
And that's all I can use, right, as a speculation. Like, you get this information and you have to put it against the knowledge that I happen to have at this age, at this time.
Yes, absolutely. I've learned that one of my primary spiritual guides is a great-grandfather who I never met. And I asked if we go back in time. And this kind of gives you an example of the type of vision dreams that I get. So I saw all these tubes, kind of like if you've been down in Miami, you see these fluorescent tubes everywhere, purple or whatever. And there was these tubes, and each tube represented my life, and then it was tied with yellow ribbon to another tube, who was my great-grandfather. And so there was like this playing card, and there was 8, maybe 12 sets of tubes, 8 to 12 sets of tubes tied by yellow ribbons, which I took to mean kind of tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree, a remembrance of past lives. And then I looked out from this playing card. It was bisected in 4 quadrants, and 3 of those quadrants had the tubes, and 1 didn't have the tube. So I took that to mean that 3/4 of our lives, probably we tumbled to time together, and 1/4 we didn't, such as this life. I never knew him in this life, but I know he's my spiritual guide. And then that was the past life. So if I calculate maybe 8 times 3 is 24, maybe 100 years between lives, maybe 2,400 years. I don't know. We go back together, him and I'm guessing. But then there was this deck of cards to the side, and on each deck there was the same pattern. So another 51 cards were in our future together. So we're going to be tumbling through time quite a bit, I think, based on my dream vision. So that's the sort of things I get, and I usually get it with light. So it's really helpful for me to understand things.
Yeah, I've always been told that our family, if they're going to come to us, they're not going to appear at the foot of your bed. They're going to come to you in a dream. And
yeah, I mean, so some people do. I mean, some people are fortunate they get that. I don't. I usually get symbols, and I have to figure it out.
Well, yeah, that's what I get from my spirit guides. And I have a list of symbols I got the first time I connected by myself without a psychic. And I've got a very strong, tall woman in a 3-peaked hat, like one of those, 1776 hats, or that kind of time. I got a sculpture. I got a town. I just went through all these things, and to this day, I've written them all down. But I'm still waiting for them all to come together at once and go, oh, that's what they meant. But I'll probably wait till I have my near death before that happens. Now, have you ever had people, or did you read any of these near deaths that were more negative than the positive?
Ooh, yeah, you ask a tough question here. Yes, I would say that out of the 4,000 near-death experiences I've read off the NDERF website, probably 0.3% are negative, so a handful. However, what is more common is that people having positive near-death experiences and are allowed to see a hellish realm from a distance. So George Ritchie comes to mind, Howard Storm, two very famous writers of near-death experiences. Howard Storm actually was briefly in hell before he was asked to be released from it, and he was immediately by Jesus. And then George Ritchie was actually taken down into hell and various areas of heaven as well, again by Jesus, actually. So what's interesting about this is that people who have near-death experiences say that God has unconditional love. What does that mean? Christians will say God has perfect love, as other people in other religions. But what does perfect love mean? I had a young woman come to me. I was selling a book, and she was asking me, as a conservative Christian, whether I believed if Jesus saved. I said yes, but I think he saves all humanity, just not Christians. And she disagreed with that, and because she believes that if you're not saved in a Christian way, you're going to spend eternity in hell. So I asked her, I said, would you, if you could imagine your worst enemy? She says, yes. If you had a choice, would you send your worst enemy, the person you hated the most, to eternity to hell? She thought about it. She said, no. I said, that's because you have too much love in your heart. At this point, she was silent. And I said, think of God, who has infinitely more love than we do. Would God send the vast majority of humanity to eternity of suffering and torture because they didn't believe a certain way? At that point, she scooted off. But the point is, with God, there is no judgment. When people have their life reviews, when they have a near-death experience, the only person who's judging their life is themselves. The beings around them are not judging them at all. So the question becomes, if God has unconditional love and God doesn't punish anyone or judge anyone, then how do people end up in hell? And the answer is because they chose it. We create our own heaven and hell here on earth. And near-death experience say there's a continuity between our experience here on earth and our experience in heaven. We bring her with us. Now, if there's a kernel of love, then we're accepting God in heaven. It doesn't matter that we so-called, quote-unquote, sin or make mistakes. It has nothing to do with it. But there are people, and I've met them in prison, and if you're in law enforcement, you've probably met them too, who are sadistic, who absolutely cannot love a single soul. It's beyond their ability. In prison, such people can be so disruptive, we have to get them out of society and put them in prison. And there's some prisoners who are so bad that we have to put them in seclusion in a special housing because they'd be too disruptive on the compound. And once you put them in special housing, they usually tear up their cell, smear feces on the wall, do all sorts of things just to be disruptive. Imagine a soul like that in heaven, who has no love, who just wants to be disruptive. It's oil and water. And so it breaks God's heart. Erica McKenzie had a near-death experience where she saw God very upset about the people who are choosing not to accept God or heaven, but choose their own hell. Now, is hell a place where they're banished? Hell is actually probably just a neutral place because souls don't die outside of heaven. They make it their own hell because they prey on each other. People who see hell often report a lot of habitual behaviors, violence and sexual stuff and different things, preying on each other because that's what they're manifesting down there. They see ghouls and goblins and demons and monstrous things that looks like out of a bad horror movie. Why? Is it really like that? Yes and no. Everything is all energy. But if you go to a high security prison, I'll tell you what people tattoo on their arms. It's not positive things. It's the jokers, the demons, the skulls, the violence, and that sort of thing. They're manifesting in tattoos on their body. In a similar way, people in the hellish realm are manifesting these dark, negative things from their own energy. So, but the idea of eternal hell is not the case. George Ritchie, when he went down there with Jesus, one thing he noticed, he says, there's nothing keeping these people in here. In fact, there were spiritual beings, angels above, ready to help take people out. And remember Howard Storm, as soon as he wanted to come out, Jesus brought him out. Unfortunately, there's a cloud over these individuals, and they don't see the light. They don't look towards the light. They choose to stay in there, even though they don't have to.
Okay.
But fortunately, it's a very, very small amount of souls who choose that. The vast majority choose to have a heavenly experience. If any of your listeners are concerned about it, the fact you're concerned means that you don't have to worry about it.
Okay, that's good to know. I've always wondered about. We have a chunk of Vancouver, British Columbia. It's it's called the Downtown East Side. It is people with mental health issues and drug abuse issues. They're victims. They're victims of a system that put people with mental health issues on the street to become victims of people who sell drugs, and to take advantage of women. Just a very, very depressing group. And a lot of these people hear voices. And I'm going to touch on something you brought up in the first half hour. These voices they hear have got them into psychologists, psychiatrists, and onto medication. And one of them actually, there's a restaurant that allows all these people who hear voices, they come in and sit down and have coffee, and they talk as a group amongst themselves about the voices they hear and what kind of medication they're on and how their lives are going. And they're kind of supported. They're supporting each other because a lot of these people go through life thinking they're the only ones who hear the voices. And one of the people who used to hear the voices, she went to a psychic on behest of a relative, and the psychic said, "Oh no, you hear voices. This voice don't listen to. This voice you do listen to. And ask this voice for help to get rid of the other voice." And she did, and she's off meds now, but she still goes to the meetings. And I wanted to get her on to interview, but she's a little bit shy about that because she was a quote-unquote street person for a long time, and she's still cautious and still very raw from the experience of years and years on the street. But now she's holding down a job and she's off her meds and everything is okay. Do you think we, in your experience, both as a psychologist in a prison situation and dealing with a lot of affected people, and I mean affected outside of prison, that in a life that eventually got them in there, your experience there and your experience with the near death and your experience with your guides and dealing with talking to people with other guides, do you think those people can be saved from the voices in a non-medical situation. I'm going to let you think about that while I take our final break of the evening. I'm going to come back with more from Dr. Roy Hill, if you can digest that run-on question that I just gave him right after this.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott. Join me Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com, where we delve into all things paranormal, supernatural, extraterrestrial, crypto, and all topics in between. Come on by, take a listen, and tell us about your experiences. We are here for the answers you need. Spaced Out Radio, broadcasting right out of this world.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle. Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
With an ever-expanding listenership base, Spaced Out Radio is the perfect place for you to advertise your product. Our listeners support those who sponsor this show. So whether you're an author or a company, Spaced Out Radio is the perfect place for you. Our pricing is more than competitive, and your advertisements will be seen and heard every show. Head to spacedoutradio.com and advertise with us today. Contact us at info@spacedoutradio.com today.
Tonight's edition of Spaced Out Weekend is brought to you by spacedoutradio.com, where you can now sign up to become a Space Traveler member. Now, for the final time tonight, here's Spaced Out Weekend's James Tyson.
Thank you, David, and welcome back, everybody, to Spaced Out Weekend, our fourth quarter here. And if you are paying attention, if you go to purpleplates.com for the next 24 hours, it's 10% off everything. Everything at purpleplates.com. Just go to the website and drill through it. And heck, ask for a computer. So they're going to sell everything for 10 off. If maybe there's like a laptop or something you want, and okay, maybe not. We'll go for the purple plates and whatever else she sells at purpleplates.com. 10% off for 24 hours only. And we're back with Dr. Roy, because we're good friends. I can call him that. Now, Dr. Roy Hill. He is the author of The Psychology and the Near-Death Experience, Searching for God. I left him with a rambled-on question just before the break. What do you think about those people with, are hearing voices? And in your experience, is it something tangible that we can address non-medically?
Well, I'm a little reluctant to say yes on that. But with God, all things possible, and I do believe that God can heal all sorts of illnesses, including mental illness. But does God heal everybody? No. In certain cases, God does heal. But I do look at mental illness as a medical illness. For instance, schizophrenics, their brains, as they get older, they start getting dementia-type symptoms. A lot of the neurons die, and the brain shrinks, actually. The connectivity goes down. Medications for mentally ill folks usually work pretty well, not for everybody, but for the majority of them. If they have a good psychiatrist or neurologist, most people respond and function very well on medication. Which gives more support that these illnesses are medically derived. And there's strong genetic evidence for mental illness as well. I want to contrast that with spiritual stuff, that medications do not take away spiritual experiences. Spiritual experiences like near-death experiences and others typically transform a person for the better. Mental illness only breaks people down. Not only are they hearing voices, but there's other symptoms such as confusion and disorientation and disheveled appearance, and people who are not able to function very well in a job situation and live independently unless they're taking medication, at least the ones who are truly mentally ill. So the first line of helping people with mental illness is unfortunately medication at this time, I believe.
Yeah.
But people who have mystical spiritual experiences should not be confused with mental illness. And I think that's an important message to get out, that too many scientists are in the scientism, which is they don't want a non-material explanation for anything, so they invent scientific sounding hypotheses that are not really truly tested out, and they say, oh, it's got to be this or that, when they really don't know. And they some of them will say that about spiritual experiences. They'll just chalk it up to mental illness, and really they're not looking at the symptoms of mental illness as being very different.
Okay, perfect. Some of these people, when I do paranormal investigations too, sometimes as the interview, I'll come out and interview the client prior to sending a team in. And, it's people with mental health issues can have a haunted house just as well as somebody who doesn't have mental health issues.
Sure, you can have both. And there's some people who may have demonic influences too. So,
yeah.
There is a great variety of stuff out there. So,
what is the mission? Like when you got this book out and you wrapped your head around what you had studied and what you had written from your interviews, you left your job. What is your mission now?
James, thanks for asking that question. That's clearly the heart of what I'm doing. There's so much pain and suffering in this world, and people suffer from depression because they don't think they're worth anything. People have been abused and victimized, and they don't think God cares. People are very, they see the hatred around them and think that, how can a loving God allow these things to happen? Or they think, well, there's no real evidence of God, therefore I think there may be just death and I fear death. So what I'm trying to do is to give people hope. One, there's nothing to fear. This is just a brief lifetime on school earth that's made to be difficult. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she's a famous psychiatrist who did all the research on death and dying, the 5 stages of grief. She worked with a lot of people who were dying, and she dealt with a lot of near-death experiences too. And she said that in every case, the people with near-death experience, they did not fear death. And that's been my experience as well. When I've talked to anybody who's in near-death experience, they say, I don't fear death anymore. In fact, they look forward to it. Not that they want to necessarily kill themselves, because they understand that this life is very important. But they know there's so much better ahead of them. We don't feel that way because this world tells we're nothing. But really, we're actually valuable spiritual beings. We're of God essence, and God loves everybody equally, no matter what you did. That's the beauty of unconditional love, of perfect love. God loves you as much as God loves me, as God loves Jesus, as God loves anybody. God loves us all, so we never have to worry about being good enough. And I want to give people that idea that they're magnificent spiritual beings, really, in true essence, that when we go up the other side, you're going to be so greatly expanded, and you're going to see a bigger picture. And the little trials and tribulations that seem to bog down your life are actually part of the school process. They're important. They're actually good. One of the first persons who had a near-death experience is written down was Julia Norwich, and she lived in the 1300s. The time of Chaucer, was the first woman to write a book in the English language, and it was about a near-death experience involving Jesus. And so, she said basically that everything was made in and for and by love. The whole fabric of the universe was created in love. And keep to that, and you'll know more forever and ever. And I think that's an important message for everybody out there. It's so easy to be callous when you see all the bad things going on in the news. But really, that's just a small part of the equation. And our true selves is really in love. And our mission, I talked about all of us having 1 or 2 or 3 missions. They're all to learn things we lack, and they're all related to love. Again, not love as an emotion, but love as things like forgiving. Not just forgiving somebody who made a bad joke, but somebody who really stabbed you in the back and abandoned you. To learn those lessons, not to diminish that, but also other things like inherent respect. It's easy to respect a teacher or a father or something like that, but what about the homeless person? Sacrifice. We talked about that already. Humility, learning faith. There's so many ways that we can learn love, and it's a beautiful, difficult experience. But people who have near-death experiences who kill themselves, they learn that they broke their contract. And when they're sent back, those who are sent back are not suicidal anymore, because they realize this earth, although difficult and limited in our abilities, is so important, because we're becoming the individuals that we're supposed to become, that we choose to become. That's a gift from God. It's a beautiful gift. So if I can say anything encouraging to your folks out there, just keep plugging away. You don't have to worry about what you're supposed to do in life. Your mission will come to you. Remember these pre-birth memories you talked about. We all planned this out before we came here. So all you have to do is be open and try to love and do the best you can, and you will learn the lessons you were meant to learn on this earth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I keep thinking back to, it's an odd thing to think back on. It's a Monty Python movie. It's like, what is your quest?
Yes, yes.
And and the unfortunate part is, in our conscious human way of living, we don't know what it is.
That's okay. And when people have a life review, they know it's love, but they're rarely told what it is. It's for us to create and figure out, and that's part of the beauty of life.
Yeah. A friend of mine, Sean Whittington, who lives in Las Vegas, he is a person that can see those demons that are in your house. His wife, on the other hand, can see just a regular spirit. So his divination is, and his path in life is to clean these things out. Wow. And then express it to other people that they do exist. Where I can't see them and his wife can't see them, but he hears them and sees them. We had somebody in the chat room here. She's out east and she's just gone to bed, but same thing. She has a paranormal group that she'll walk into a building and she says, if everybody could see the things that she sees daily, no one would go outside. Mm-hmm. And there are people like that. That is their divination. That is through the years of whatever got to them this point in their life, they now realize my job, so to speak, is to help somebody firstly identify them as, what you're feeling is real. You're not crazy. And here's how we can get rid of them. And it's faith and cleaning. And their mind has been pointed out to me from the other side, so to speak, is to identify people who are higher energy than others or empaths and basically point out, this is who you are. And these are the things you experienced when you were younger, and this is who you are. And they look at me like, how did you know my entire life? And I said, what I've been kind of pointed out. So it's not, again, we're carrying these little pieces of a puzzle around.
We are, and together we make a beautiful puzzle, or as near-death experience people say, a tapestry. Yeah. And that tapestry is not complete without your thread. And even though each of us feel like we have a small thread, that thread pulls on the entire tapestry in imperceptible ways. So, if I could share just one near-death experience with your audience about love, a friend of mine who had a near-death experience, she went up to a garden, which is pretty typical of what's manifest for folks up there. It helps them have familiar transition. And in that garden, there was a stream and a little bridge over it, which usually represents a barrier where the NDE person can't go on unless they fully die. And at the edge of the stream was God manifest as a man, because that's what this person could relate to. And she sat next to God, and God asked her, what if it was just me and you and nobody else? She goes, well, what do you mean? He repeats, what if it's you and me and nobody else? And she says, well, I'd probably irritate you a while because I like to chatter on and on. And he goes, no, what if it was me and you and nobody else? Now look at that tree. So she looks at this tree in heaven, and in heaven we don't have eyes, really. We're just energy, and so we see things by knowing, we hear things by knowing, etc., 360. So she saw the tree at all levels, from the molecular level, outside level, to the energy of God within the tree. And she said, I see you, God. And says, well, that's right. And what do you see when you see your parents? She says, I see you, God. What about that ex-husband of yours? She goes, well, I guess I see you, God. And what do you see when you look in the mirror? And she wanted to say nobody special, but she knew better of it. She said reluctantly, I see you, God. She says, that's right. So the point of that is that God loves each one of us so much that it could be us and God, you, every person and God, and nobody else. And that's how God views us, with that much love. So I think that's something to keep in mind when we feel that God's far away. God is really there with us at all times. Julia Norwich, who I mentioned earlier, she was given a vision of this servant and a master, and the servant is in heaven and with God, and God is the master, and the servant is sent down to earth. And the first thing that happens to the servant is he falls into a dell and can't get up, and he's in pain, and he's writhing, and the worst part of it, he's alone, and God doesn't feel like he's there. And Julie Norwich looks at God to see if he's angry at the servant for failing so fast, and God wasn't. God said, look at my servant who's suffering all this for me. Not only am I not angry with him, but he deserves a gift. And that's each one of us. When we make mistakes, God is looking at this life that we chose to live, to learn for him, to do the work that we're supposed to do, and honors it, even though it's imperfect. God shines through our cracks. And that's from a near-death experience person who felt guilty about the stuff she did, and Jesus told her, God shines through your cracks.
That's amazing. And the comments, the near-death experience people have, or the conversations that they have on the other side, it is very important. And I would bet you not too many of them forget exactly what was said. Sometimes it's blocked. And sometimes it's too much information for them to bring back. But those that do remember things will remember it for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's blocked because it's, there's things that we're just not supposed to know at this specific time. I think so. Yeah, when you start going down that tunnel, or you see the light and you hear the voices or see the figures of past relatives, basically telling you, not your time, you've got to go back. I'd be so curious to carry on a conversation. Right. Okay. I know it's not my time. I will go back, but while I've got you. And sometimes they're allowed to spend some time up there to ask questions and look around. But some people are revived quicker than others, and time doesn't mean the same thing up there, but time does have some impact, it appears, with when people have to come back. So those who are in a coma, like Evan Alexander, had very extensive stays up there because he was in a coma for a week. People who die in the operating table for 10 seconds maybe have less time for conversations, and people who are gone for a couple minutes may have very lengthy conversations and tours of heaven, and they may have some of it blocked, and they may remember some of it too. So it is fascinating. I hate to leave a conversation where it leaves me wanting a near-death experience. Well, the beauty of it is that we're all going to have that experience one time or another. Even an 80-year-old lifetime is nothing compared to eternity. Yeah, it is an opening. It's that baby step. What you've written is a fascinating peek into other people's lives and other people's experiences. Now it's just getting us to understand it. And the easiest way, unless we want to do all the research again, which I would say don't, if you guys go to Dr. Hill's website, neardeathexppsy.com, or just actually Google Dr. Roy Hill and see what that gets you to. It'll get you to his website and his book, Psychology and the Near-Death Experience, Searching for God, Dr. Roy L. Hill. And it's one of those things that, I'd really like to say is needed at this time. All we hear about is negativity and things blowing up and the economy going for a poop, and just something to take your mind off of that thing, and point out that when we actually do go to the other side, we're not going to hit a wall. It's just a cushy little blanket and a fluffy pillow we're going to land on.
Right, we're not going to be playing harps on in heaven. We're going to have lots to do, and just to kind of just add to what you were saying about the book. Probably the easiest way to buy the book is just to go on Amazon.com. It's on Kindle. It's on BarnesandNobles.com, Apple's iTunes. People can certainly go to my website. It'll take you actually to Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're going to be digging up for a copy of it to give it away to our Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers group, and as one of the monthly gifts that we're giving out, along with our other bits and pieces of swag. But it's an important book, and I'd really like to advise my listener to pick it up if you get a chance. And you can download it on Kindle. Did you say?
Yes, you can download it on Kindle.
Oh, see there, that's easy peasy.
Now,
if you could just put it on a chip and put it in my head, because
that'd be easier.
Yeah, and there better be pictures in it because I'm not a reader.
Okay.
I'm more of a colorer, so it's like I'm full left brain here. But it's good. I'm going to definitely grab it and go through it, because I am very interested in the whole near-death experience, and listening to people and those who shared their experiences. And I'm very interested in what you found on it, and which got you off on the mission that you've chosen.
Yes.
So far, so good?
Yes, I appreciate all that. And, I found that people who are real spiritual seekers like the book the most, who want to get into the meat of things. So.
And how about the Christian South? Are they okay with it?
Well, I don't know. If they're not, they're going to be even more unhappy with being the future. I have a new book coming out called Jesus and the Near-Death Experience, and I've studied hundreds of accounts of Jesus, and I'm going to report what Jesus is saying to people now versus 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be a whole fresh look at Jesus that's never been seen before. Nobody's ever did a book on this before. So that should be coming out near Christmas, I hope.
Perfect. In your experience with the interviews and readings, did you bump into anybody who saw any other of the ascended masters, like Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad, or has it strictly been Jesus?
Very rarely. I talked to this individual who's studying near-death experiences with Iranians, with Shia Muslims. They do not see the Prophet Muhammad. And is scouring the INDERF website, and I talked to their one of the researchers and asked him, and he says, yeah, sometimes they're seen briefly, but as far as he knows, nobody's had a long conversation with the other ascended masters. So sometimes they're seen briefly. Now, I'll have to say that the majority of near-death experience reports are from Western countries. So, but there does seem to be that Jesus is portrayed differently.
Yeah, it's kind of like when your dead grandmother shows up. She's not going to look like she's been in the coffin for 20 years. It's going to be a little more angelic and youthful and healthy.
Well, I meant that Jesus serves a different purpose.
Yes. Oh, I see. You mean, yeah. It's this is the time of Jesus. The last 2,000 years is the time of Jesus until we move on to a new master in the next 2,000 years. But that's for the next 6 or 7 generations away, I think. Oh, or maybe not. Maybe that's the 2020 the lady was talking about. Anyway, that's a whole other book. Well, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Hill, for coming on.
Well, thank
really
you, Mike.
appreciate it. It was very interesting.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's, and when you get your other book out, I'm going to be tracking you down and we'll hopefully get you on with that one too.
I look forward to it.
Just before I let you go, when did you say that was coming out?
I'm not sure. I'm hoping before Christmas. It's to the publisher. As soon as it gets edited and we get it all ready to go,
perfect.
We'll be coming out.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody. Remember, keep an open mind. Good night, everyone. Have a great week.
This is our last goodbye. Young hearts will stop. Torn souls set free. All that we have is now. If this is what you want, then come to me.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? They sing as they go. What are those voices? Look up for the mountain. Because somebody hide, somebody better hide on through the hill, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. We are after you, dead or alive. We are out to get you, dead or alive. And forget yourself. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done. Throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get them.